We're back with Vinny Benvenuto.
Hey.
Retired NYPD, but now you're still working, right?
I still work, yep.
Jeez, what do you do now?
I'm still in law enforcement.
Law enforcement. God bless you.
For an unnamed agency and city, we have to say that.
Thank you.
So, you know, a lot of what we talk about here on Inside Blue 360, unfortunately, is the way cops are treated negatively, how tough it is for cops these days. Vinny and I were cops together back in the 80s on 42nd Street,
Yep.
which was really one of the most dangerous places in America for a while. We used to put, for our cops out there, especially for young cops to try to imagine this, on just one block we would have 6-foot cops on one side of the street, 6-foot cops on the other side of the street, any number of radio cars coming up down the block from any number of different agencies. Transit was a different agency then. Port Authority cops were going up down the block. Street crime was always rolling in and taking collars. There was a million different people.
Narcotics would go buys, right?
Right. Narcotics would be on the block.
Stupid narcotics guys.
They were out there, though.
They were out there.
Yeah, that's right. You got to get paid.
And let me tell you something. It was not just dangerous for them, for the uncles, the undercovers, not just from the clientele, but they could get knocked in the head by a cop with a nightstick, right?
They did.
That happened to me a few times. I got tossed around.
So,
it wasn't too fun.
so Vinny, you know, lived the rebirth of New York, and us cops who worked back in those days, we like to think that the reason New York City is the great city it is today is because of the blood, sweat, and tears we put into fixing.
I think you're right.
Yeah, right. A lot of changes, and it makes more tourists welcome to come now.
They let us
do your job.
They let us do the job.
Right, because before Cookie Monster would just be assaulting people right and left.
Oh yeah.
And these guys came in, and now that zone is it's true. It's annoying even when you live here. You don't want those animals.
But too, you had self-respect too. So when you went out there, regardless of what. Maybe the policy, we had this thing that, you know, they didn't want us to make drug collars. Remember in uniform?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all we did was make drug collars.
Right.
Because if we didn't, they would have lost the city a long time
Right,
ago.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You had self-respect and you weren't going to have that tolerated in front of you.
Right.
You know, you wore that uniform and it means something.
Right, yeah, exactly. You don't do something in front of the police.
You know, and another difference, and you know, I talked about this, I don't know if we talked about this on camera or off a few weeks ago, Michelle.
The sex change?
Well, which I think took good.
It looks good, Jerry. It looks good.
I'd show it to you.
You would know it.
You would never know, right?
Your breasts are coming in nicely.
Well, they came in down here for some reason. I don't know why.
That's what happens when you have that high option rider.
Now with transparency in law enforcement, right? And all the cops are wearing a body camera.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now when a cop stops someone and they have a joint or maybe just a small amount of cocaine on them, they get arrested.
Yeah.
And an arrest is like herpes. It lasts forever on your record. I don't care if a record is expunged or not. Someone's going to be able to find it. But I bet you a lot of people would rather just have a boot in the butt and their stuff down the drain.
Well, when you were able to do that.
Well,
but
for a low-key...
what's a liability on that, though?
Yeah, for a low-key... You know, like for a low-key amount, that's one thing. Like, you know what I mean? If you have heroin, it's an opioid. Things that are very, very dangerous, of course. You know, and these guys have body cams.
I know.
They also...
Actually, the perps, right. The civilians, right? Everybody's rolling with a cell phone camera.
Well, let's say you're on camera, right?
Yeah.
You get a guy with a bag of crack. Okay, one bag of crack, and you use your discretion, it's a misdemeanor, and you let him go, he's got that bag of crack, right? And the guy's high. He walks out into the street, gets hit by a bus.
Right.
Who's getting sued?
Exactly. Just
you
like
are. Who's in trouble? You are.
You
right?
just maybe, but you know, even if you just have a conversation with that guy, you have to be careful what you say. Are you all right, buddy?
Hey, producer Bob, could you Google if I'm being sued by anybody from back in the day? You got me all nervous now.
There's a lot of
No, we didn't have the cameras on. You're right.
I was always wondering why there was so many bus accidents around when I was walking a football.
But you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Right.
I actually had an advocate tell me one time when I was in another academy class, say to me, you know, it was the police department's fault for giving her a break when she was caught smoking weed on the train, right? That she got in so much trouble with drugs because he let her go.
Interesting.
So I said, so it's the cops' fault
Right,
now that you had this weakness that you couldn't lay off that stuff.
Right.
Well, there are a lot of
because he cut your break not to take you through the system for a bone. Really?
Yeah. And like that's the other side. A lot of like civilians don't see that. There's, you know, police have the discretion. Obviously, you know, if somebody's throwing a knife in somebody else's chest, then you got to lock them up. But a lot of these violations, it's just like a summons, just like a red light summons. there was we were talking about body cam video. There was some guy from, I don't know where he was. He was somebody important, and the cops pulled him over, and he blew a gasket on
the city of Newburgh.
The city of Newburgh. Guys blows a gasket, and I tell you something, I give those cops credit, because the guy's just like,
Right.
You know, and they maintain their professionalism.
25 minutes, the guy was berating the cops because he was like a councilman or
you know
whatever
who
he was.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you still get, like, dude, chill.
Right.
Chill. You don't know who's watching.
2 words go a long way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right, exactly.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. You think those guys would have...
Exactly.
You know what? This is a councilman in our town. He apologized. We have discretion. Sir, please don't do it, and thank you very much.
Right.
See you later.
And instead, what happened? Now, evidently, the video is, publicized. Like, I was trying to find it. But, I mean, for what? What did... And he was... I think it's because the guy, he was going too slow. And he pulled him over. And you know how aggravating that is when I'm driving home? I'm driving home last night on the LIE. If you can't keep up with the flow of traffic, drive on the service road. So I can imagine this cop being pissed because he was allowed to pull him over. And you don't know. You know what? He was probably texting.
I think we found out what pushes Michelle's buttons in this little conversation.
Road rage.
Yeah.
Slow drivers.
Slow driver.
Good thing she was a narco ranger, not a highway cop.
Well,
But seriously,
she
you
sat in a
gotta-
P-van. That's about it, right?
Yeah.
She didn't drive the P-van.
That's right. No, you're right. I couldn't see over the PV. I used to hate that thing because I needed like a stepladder to get in.
we
got another Ford
Could you
Bronco.
please
Race guys.
explain to our listeners
That's
what
what
the
the
P-van
prisoner
is?
van is. What you transport the prisoners in back to the precinct to process their arrests in a timely manner.
And what also happens in the P-van sometimes? When you're sitting out there on a set for a long time.
It smells.
Because people...
They don't shower. They take their Timberland boots off when they don't have socks on, so it smells really bad.
There is a unique smell from toe jam as to armpit odor, right?
Yeah. And then they made these P-vans. They actually upped the prisoner vans when I was still in narcotics, and they made them almost like you close the door, locked it, because somebody decided that we're going to use regular commuter vans. And so perps were flying out of the car. They were just, okay, right out,
Right.
Yeah.
So they got these vans, and you locked them, and they're like, oh, they're so much safer. And my partner and I are sitting in there, and we guy was trying to hang himself on the seatbelt. And so I said to the other perp, dude, why didn't you say anything? And he goes, yo, he wants to kill himself, let him kill himself. That's his business. I'm like, dude, we all would have been screwed. We would have been sitting in central booking for hours.
You'd have been like, no, he didn't kill himself, you did it.
Yeah, I go, bro, you gotta give us the heads up because we want to get out of here. We don't want this to be an all-day thing. And of course, the sergeant's like, let's get another body because I need 5 hours. Like, dude, I want to get home. Can we drop this guy off at Bellevue maybe? And then he wanted a cigarette. Like, we're not giving you an
What was the
incendiary.
bad thing? You had to push him out of the van and drop him off in Bellevue. Otherwise, you had to sit on him. Remember, if
Yeah.
you walked him in?
Yeah, I didn't.
That sucked.
The boys
I
did
hated
that.
Oh, I hated that.
Because it was a dude. If it was a girl, I would go. But the guys, they sent them there. Because
I
I
tell-
had to deal with them for 7 hours.
I tell people that, that if you brought an EDP into the hospital, you owned him until he got released.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it was a collar or not. Oh, they're like, what? They think we're nuts when I tell people stories.
And one time I went into central booking with a perp and he
I
smelled.
just want to say, that is in Vinny's unnamed new agency.
Well, that's how all when I go down to D.C., I tell them those stories when I'm in the Unity tour and stuff like that, Yeah, all agencies are like, you do what?
Yeah.
What? They think we're crazy.
It was. I think though that made us tougher. The grinding out all the hours and seeing things from beginning to end. I know a lot of agencies, there's a lot of handoff. This cop does this, gives it to another cop who does this, gives it to a third cop who does that. And in New York, you kind of did it all from the beginning to end, and it gave you a 360 view of the criminal justice system. Come on.
Yeah. What is that Unity tour you're talking about?
The police Unity tour.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So basically, there's offices all over the country. It started as a small band of cops, and they rode from their department down to Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay, the bike ride, right?
They raised money.
That's cool.
So they ride for those who died. So
oh, nice.
I think they gathered about $3 million last year. They rode. So, and I used to take a contingent from the agency I used to work for, and we used to go down there, and they still go down. And all of Connecticut will go down, all of New York will go down. The New England area is represented, and you get huge contingencies
cool.
But now you're getting other countries participating.
Oh, that's really cool.
It
That's
is.
great.
It's really
nice
good.
to see other agencies jumping in.
There are agencies in California. They come like 2/3 of the way. Like they come to like Nashville and stuff, and then they ride from Nashville to Washington
Yeah.
D.C.
LAPD has got one of the best setups.
Oh,
They-
yeah.
They have a contract with I think DHL or one of those.
Okay. Yeah, they
those
get
carriers.
the
They
equipment.
put their motorcycles on
Yeah.
there. They fly them in for them.
Yeah.
They have an awesome rapport.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Great working together with each other. So they fly them to New Jersey and then or whatever they come in from, either Pennsylvania
Yeah.
or Philly, and then they ride in. It's a 300-mile trip.
Oh,
about,
yeah,
on
yeah.
bicycles. But those guys are organized. I mean, I love watching their motors. They take they sit with the local PDs and they do the traffic control to let the bikes go through, because at one point in time you have 1,500 bicycles meeting up and then going into Washington
need to-
D.C.
right.
So it's a huge parade. It's a huge gathering.
That's cool. That's
very
pretty
positive.
cool.
You know,
That's nice.
It's
See,
good.
we do positive things.
We're probably gonna see it because we're hoping that the show is gonna be down at Police Week this year. So hopefully we'll get to see the Unity Riders.
That's
which should
going to be
nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
You know? We've been down there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for different reasons.
Yeah, for different
You
reasons.
know, I had the unfortunate experience to go through that twice. Remember when I was in street crime? I had that with
Oh, with
Gillespie got
Kevin
killed.
Gillespie.
Oh yeah, that was
You
my
know?
first night in narcotics when that happened.
Jeez.
That's not a fun way, because you had it. Bronx Narcotics, man, they were there,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's when everything was out the window. You got to show up. You got to be there because whatever's get done.
Yeah, we were doing B&B right over there.
That was
Enforcement, rather. We were doing
Crazy.
enforcement. Yeah.
Kevin
Crazy
Gillespie
night.
was a officer who was killed on the Grand Concourse in the Bronx. Him and his buddies in street crime affected a car stop. If I get anything wrong, just punch me.
Carjacking.
And it was a carjacked car. And Angel Diaz,
Angel
that was the
Diaz.
perpetrator?
That was him.
Got into a running gun battle with these guys. You know, it's like any competition, and Angel Diaz won that gun battle. But he was captured within a couple of days, and he took the coward's way out. He killed himself in jail rather than go to trial.
Actually, I thought he was kind of honorable when he did that, but that's me.
Well, you know, I'll tell you something. It saves as because I know from going through with Tony Dwyer, it does save the cops, surviving cops and family and everybody else of having to go through the trial.
Right.
And then even after you go through the trial, 25 years later, you got to go through these parole hearings every 2
Right,
years.
right.
So he did save the Gillespie
taxpayers
family
and all
and
the grief,
all,
yeah.
all of Kevin's partners, all of that.
I think
Yeah.
that was the most honorable thing he ever did in his life. But
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah, no, I
You
hear
know?
you. I hear you.
So you left the NYPD,
Right.
and then so now you do other cool law enforcement things.
Yeah, I do.
That's pretty cool.
I do.
You keep busy.
You know what I find? I find that no matter where you go, right, they love the NYPD.
Yeah.
But to a certain degree,
Oh yeah.
they're afraid of the NYPD.
Yeah.
You know, because one of the
Oh, yeah.
one of the biggest obstacles I run into is that sometimes they're afraid of how much we've seen and what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you something. Being around the block a little bit, one of the greatest things that the NYPD gives us and nobody understands is how organized we are.
Oh, of course. And
You know?
yeah.
And people don't
Yeah.
understand that, you know, and when you leave here, when you leave the NYPD
Right.
and you go into another line of work, whether it be security, a business and stuff,
Retail.
if you take that organizational skill with
No,
you,
you're right, you're
that
100, yeah.
floats you.
I looked like a
through
superstar folding
90%
those
of what you're doing.
Alfanis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
No, you're right. It's the organizational skills.
I did a security gig, and I'll never forget. The Cheetah Girls were in White Plains. They were getting autographs signed. Huge. People lined up down the block. It was all NYPD, retired NYPD
Yeah.
guys working security. They all came in. They were asked, wear a black shirt and khakis. Everybody came in, black shirts
Yeah.
and khakis, right? And you had to see them. They were standing down the line of people
Yeah.
like they would at a detail on Fifth Avenue.
Well, you obviously
people
know
laughing
good
with
cops that
them.
dress like that.
And joking with them. And,
Yeah, no, it's
you know,
right. And the thing is, too, something like that. Usually, they know who they're going to put there. You're not going to put Joe Harvey miserable cop
no.
there.
But the discipline
And no, it's true. It's true.
clearly showed through, and we got that here. And
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
And when you leave here, that's what you take with you
Exactly.
for yourself to make your life to increase your quality of life.
I do stand-up comedy. I use those. I tell you something. Being a cop helped me with so many stupid things, like the spotlight would go out in the middle of a show. You know, like, let me just get a flashlight and rig it up. You know, but like stupid little
panic,
things
right,
like
yeah.
remember, like when you're
Boom,
like
discipline.
if your radio car didn't work. I'm not bringing it to the shop because I won't have a car for. So you'd fix it yourself.
Fix yourself, or right in Manhattan.
In
What do you
Manhattan,
do?
taxi garage.
Yeah, you go
$3
taxi
to
garage,
change your
little
tire
stuff.
out,
Yeah,
get back
yeah.
on the road, you're good to go, and you
You gotta
got
write
your
it.
car.
One time the guy at the shop was scraping, the Midnights used to do this. You want the paper? No, we're good. You sure? And they would just run inside, and you're like, oh, Jesus, what did they hit? and they put the car was acting. It's leaking antifreeze, right? It's leaking. Why is it leaking antifreeze? We go to the shop. The guy, he's scraping the cement off the bottom because they ran over a parking meter. And the guy's like, I really need a 49 for this. That's like a legitimate letterhead from the police who said that. But I'll just do it for you guys.
Yeah.
Thank God.
And what do you do?
I just got him lunch.
You and your partner get together because you're broke,
Yeah.
and you scrape together like $5.
Yeah.
And you $5.
Come back with a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever the guy wanted, a square bag for the ride home.
Yeah, anything.
A
Resourceful.
square bag for our listeners who are law-abiding citizens is a ice-cold 6-pack of beer for the ride.
That's right. Like even when I babysit, sometimes I run out of stuff like diapers.
A square bag.
I just take my old bulletproof vest. I pop it right underneath that kid. It becomes an instant diaper.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Man, that would hold all the moisture.
It
'Cause
does.
It does when you wear it. That's
And
for
then
sure.
I have the ballistic
Years
shields
worth.
on the outside, so in case we bump or something.
Oh my
A
goodness
little
gracious.
rough ride with the babysitting.
So, Vinny, you've been a cop for 30 gazillion years now, and you plan on being a cop for 40 gazillion years, and you're an enthusiastic guy
Yeah.
being a cop. How did you stay enthusiastic?
A couple things, one of the best things that ever happened to me was that I went from Midtown South to street crime and then to a residential area. And then when you get a steady sector in a residential area, which we didn't really have in the South, because we're dealing with commercial premises, and doing midnights, the commercial premises are closed. But when you go to a residential area, you get to know the people in
Yeah,
the residences. And I'll tell you something, the key, I think, to being a very successful cop is that when the residents know that you're their cop, that even the bad guys respect you.
Yeah.
So, and they know, like, you're fair. That's the
Right.
number one word that they use when you have to come and get them and stuff like that. They say, well, I want to go with him. He's fair. There were detectives I worked with in the 5-2. I used to lock them up, and the first thing they would say is, I want to talk to this detective. I'm only talking to this
Yeah.
detective, or I'm only talking to that detective. You know why? They trusted them. They were fair, and they're the only ones that they would relate to. And I said, when I went from the South to there, here I am, 10 years on a job, and I got some guy
Yeah.
telling me I'm only talking to this detective, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Why? I want to do that too. And sure enough, that was just another tool to put in the kit.
Because they know, right? They know
Yeah.
that you're gonna do something. Especially like in Brooklyn, and I used to do search warrants on Morris Avenue in the Bronx, 2200 Morris Avenue, all the time. And there was residents that lived in that building that were actually happy to see us doing them,
Yeah.
and because they lived there. And
Right.
it wasn't a housing development. It was a legitimate, residence. Like it wasn't city subsidized. These are people's houses.
Right.
They don't want that going on. Nobody does.
And then here's the other thing too, like, when you start talking to people, I think, and this is huge, people forget because the media tries to
Yep.
steer them in a different direction. But our main function is to make sure that the Constitution and the laws,
Right.
that people live freely, and we're there to prevent other people from infringing upon that freedom.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
we're taking you away, think about this. It has been the biggest bamboozling, I think, in society that the media has allowed, and the politicians have allowed people to realize that they wrote the laws.
Right.
We just are the middleman that enforce that
Yeah.
law, and we bring them to other people to adjudicate those laws.
Right.
Somehow in the mix, they blaming us for the laws and
Right.
adjudicate. We don't do any of that. We're
Right.
the middleman.
Right.
The only bad thing that we have to take the brunt of is when people don't want to come with us, and
Right.
we have to win.
Right.
Because if we don't, it's going to be catastrophic. It's going to
Exactly.
be catastrophic for the person we're taking in, catastrophic for
Right.
a particular officer, or people that we're surrounded, because
Right.
it's our responsibility at that point in time. And that, to me, is the biggest bamboozling that they have perpetrated upon us.
Right, right.
If you have an issue with the way the system is, then you need to change the system.
Exactly,
We're
yeah.
not the system. We're a cog in the wheel.
We try to tell people all the time, like, sometimes I can't sleep and I'll turn on C-SPAN and I'm watching like the Senate hearings and wow, that's going on. Like people, it's just like when your school taxes, it gets revoted on when everybody's on vacation in the summer. It always fails at the end of the school year, but then somehow, they always sneak like July 3rd, and like nobody's here.
July 3rd, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. So that, they do what they have to do too. And like you said, we talk about all the time. We're called for stupid things. Not just there's a squirrel in my house. Well, the Proxneck projects. I had to go get a squirrel out of the house. I don't know how to do that.
I had a bat in my house.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
Call the ESU and watch them do it.
But I bet you learned how to get a squirrel out of
I
house.
learned to call ESU and have them do it.
You know what they did for us with the bat?
What?
They froze them with the fire
That's
extinguisher.
cool stuff, yeah.
Fire
Yeah.
extinguisher, next thing you know, out.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you heard Vinny's sound effects. Vinny, who is your idol?
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo. So other kids grew up idolizing Mickey Mantle, or I don't know, anybody.
Scooby-Doo! How could you not like Scooby?
Yeah.
You know,
He's got many mysteries on. I watch them.
Well, my detective skills kick in. That's where it comes from.
Mystery
But,
machine.
you know,
my first night riding a radio car with this guy, I don't know even why I asked you that question.
we were having fun. That's why.
I would love to ride in that mystery machine. What goes on in there with
for
the
other
other
reasons,
chicks?
right?
You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
Well, you know, hey, hashtag me too. We just talked about Harvey Weinstein before. You know, he could have been the producer of that cartoon for all we know.
No. Never. Never.
They got nothing on Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah, that's right.
That we know of. Not yet.
I love
So-
watching some of those cartoons like Bugs Bunny because you see like how many different messages
Oh,
they
please.
have, you know?
Please, Bugs Bunny is like
It's
would never be
amazing.
on the air these
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
All right, so I got given a high sign. Vinny, you've been a great guest.
Thank you.
Vinny,
Thank you.
it was my pleasure to work with you back in the day. Vinny, for those who are still working with Vinny or are served by Vinny because Vinny is their officer, Vinny is a true blue public servant, a hero. He's got a heart as big as the state
Thank
of
you.
Texas.
Thank you.
And we need more cops like you, Vinny.
I appreciate it.
And there is a thing called retirement. I want to say it, but I'm glad that you still have the energy and enthusiasm to do the job.
Trust me, I have an imagination. I know what to do when I leave.
He knows.
Yeah. But thank you very much for having me.
Oh,
really.
yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
We'll have you back, right?
You guys are great.
We
Great.
try.
I
Maybe in
love
a
this.
bar, though. Next time in a bar.
Oh, wow. We can broadcast from a bar?
We'll have
Do
to talk
anything,
to.
we're
We'll have to
retired.
talk to executive producer.
This isn't like we're on the job.
I got an in with Pam.
Yeah. We can do whatever we want.
I think I can convince
We're
her.
going to broadcast off the subway one day.
So coming up next, we're going to have Pat Russo from Cops and Kids Boxing.
Yeah.
Pat is another great guy who's just doing some really good stuff, and we're looking forward to talk to him. Maybe he can teach me how to throw a proper left. So, which I never had a good left. So.
I think it's more important to duck.
Yeah.
But that's me.
Yeah. I'm going to run.
Thanks, brother.